Hi, my name is Victor Wales, and I will be presenting my capstone thesis, Educational Aquatic Skills Acquisition and Their Relation to Drowning in Elementary Age Children. This is for Physical Education 589, Dr. Angela Robles, in Fall 2 of 2017. Current estimates suggest that there are around 175,000 child deaths annually due to drowning. This is really only an estimate because some of the bigger countries in the world, like China and India, don't really give exact numbers when it comes to childhood drowning. So the best we can do is estimate. The purpose of this study is to investigate the best practices for educational aquatic skill acquisition and drowning prevention in elementary age children. Basically trying to find out which are the best skills to teach when a child is involved in a learn to swim or a water safety skill program. The central research questions for this study included what are the factors that contribute to effective environments for elementary aged water safety lessons? What are the primary water skills you would teach elementary age children who have never been exposed to formal swim lessons? And the third one was, what are examples of measurable skill tests which you prefer when determining an elementary age child's water competency? So what kind of tests would you give to make sure that a child is water safe? The first research article that I looked at was from Australia. It was called Learning to Swim, What Influences Success? Basically, the study was conducted to find which water safety skills should be mastered by elementary age children before they leave primary school in Australia. Australia has the Swim and Survive program. They usually start it in first grade, and they have 10 different award levels, but they have 4 main levels, starting with level 1 that goes to level 4. Now, level 4, what they're hoping in Australia is that every child can pass level 4 before they go on to junior high school and then high school. They call it primary school in Australia. So what they've been doing, and they've been doing this for about 20 years, is they've been teaching these different levels, but they really wanted to figure out what is working. Like, where are the kids? How long does it take the kids to actually get to level 4, which is about 6th grade if they start in 1st grade. So the data was based on 7,726 children aged 5 to 12 years who participate during school hours in the Swim and Survive program. They used 14 core components which build upon the first 3 levels from age 5 to age 11. Now, each level consists of anywhere between 10 and 14 different swim skills that you need to master, along with safety skills and lifeguard skills that you can help someone else survive a sudden fall into the water. The analysis was taken using IBM SP SS19. They used Pearson's chi-square just to figure out the difference in nominal categorical data. A lot of that had to do with the age of the participants. The results indicated that a child had a major influence on the level he or she achieved. And each year a child ages, he or she has a 2.5 times greater chance of achieving level 4. So the important thing about this is that as a child gets older, obviously their skill set increases. We didn't know that it increased by 2.5 times. So, as you get older and they're developing these skills through level 1, level 2, level 3, and then ultimately, graduating out of level 4, what this study emphasized was the importance of ensuring that there's a progression within a skill set which is age appropriate. So, like let's say a level 1 child has to swim 10 meters. Well, in level 2 it's 20 meters, in level 3 it's 30 meters, and then in level 4 it's 50 meters. So having a progression when you're teaching these skills is important because every year they get older, they improve by 2.5 times. And that leads towards ultimately finishing level 4. And what is the age that you want to finish level 4, which is 12. So doing 20 hours a year at least of school curriculum starting in 1st grade allows them to figure that, okay, the skills that they're teaching right now are going to let kids finish level 4. The second research article that I used, Can You Swim in Waves? Children's Swimming, Floating, and Entry Skills in Calm and Simulated Unsteady Water Conditions, was done in Norway. And it looked at, the study looked at the differences in swimming, floating, and entry skills in children between calm and simulated open water conditions. They used 66 children. They're 11 years of age. They tested them once when the water was calm, and then they tested them once when the water was wavy, and the waves were about 12 to 18 inches. They used something called a wave ball, and they put it in the middle of the pool, and it pulses, and waves are created from the center of this ball out to the sides. Well, they can create the size of the ball that they used in this study, created waves that were about 12 to 18 inches. So they did the tests first. First one was a 200-meter time trial swim, a 3-minute back float, a diving entry, and a rolling entry. A rolling entry is something where you literally roll into the water and wind up falling in on your back, which is a good simulation for falling into the water. Most people actually do fall upside down into the water on their head or on their back. The results showed a really big marked difference in the skill competency between calm water and wavy water tests. As much as 60% difference in the time it took for the kids to swim, how long they could float, compared, when it's just nice and calm versus them going up and down. And so the data, was treated statistically, using repeated t-measure tests and SPSS 19 statistical package. And the research suggested that thorough and large enough training dose of open water situations, simulation, games, exercises, that type of thing should be included in all Learn to Swim programs when preparing children for uncertain and more demanding outdoor water conditions. And this is really important because almost everyone is taught swim lessons in an indoor or maybe an outdoor pool, depending on where you live. The water is nice and calm. It's one instructor, one-on-one. 1 to 4 is usually the biggest number that an instructor has, and that is just not what's going to really happen in most situations. Up to 70% of drowning occurs in open water conditions, and in cold water. And so when you're someone who's being taught in an 85-degree pool with no waves and in a bathing suit, and you fall into the ocean or a lake, or you're on a boat or in a river, in these situations where the water's cold, you're clothed, how do these skills, what's the detriment effect of what you learned, and now how can you carry that over into a new situation? So this is a really important article for me because it really led to a lot of the current research that is saying, we really need to make a change in how we're teaching these lessons. Research article 3, Float First, Trapped air between clothing layers significantly improves buoyancy after immersion, was another really interesting study. 29 participants, 12 to 13-year-old children. And the study examined the natural buoyancy of children, and how it's actually enhanced when you're clothed. You think that'd be really detrimental, but the study says that really the first 2 minutes. So when you fall into the water fully clothed, the air is trapped inside your clothing, and you get an extra 2 minutes of buoyancy. So that's something that's really not taught. Usually you're taught to take, immediately strip your clothes off. But actually, the best thing you can do is keep your clothes on. This also has a big effect because you have the cold water shock, cold water response. And what that does is, with the panic of falling into cold water, it elevates your heart rate, it elevates stress levels, anxiety, blood pressure. And so a lot of times people drown within 3 meters of safety and in less than 3 feet of water because they fall into cold water and they start hyperventilating, they panic, and they drown. And this study showed that if you fall into the water, the first thing you should do is make sure you get onto your back, relax, and just stay afloat. The methodology of my paper, of the study, was conducted only after I submitted my IRB, I filled out my consent forms, and then what I did is I went to the owners of a number of swim schools around California and Hawaii that I have contacts with, and I presented them with this with the Aquatic Skills Acquisition Survey, the ASAS, which was done on SurveyMonkey. And I got 38 participants, 7 male, 31 female. That's actually about the ratio of women to men when it comes to water safety and learn to swim lessons. And there's a number of factors that kind of lend towards women being much more dominant in this field than men. But that's something that we can get into probably at a different time. The study used both qualitative and quantitative methods. It was the demographics were I wanted aquatic professionals and managers that are currently teaching because I really wanted their opinions on their own curriculum. And there is a big, in the United States especially, disconnect between the Learn to Swim programs and the research. And so I wanted to see what was being taught and how they felt about what was being taught within their schools. The results, there were 3 main themes when it came to the questions that were asked, and multiple choice, yes, no, and the open-ended questions. The first theme that came out was ideal environments. And this explored the participants' views on where and under what conditions would it be ideal to teach water safety lessons. The majority of people, of the participants, felt that calm, warm pool with a small number of students wearing bathing suits was the ideal condition to teach swim lessons. The minority felt that you needed, hey, let's try and simulate a little bit more towards what they're going to deal with, which is wavy pool or an open body of water, to simulate actual conditions. The second theme, which was foundational skills, involved the participants acknowledging the skills they would use to teach an elementary child how to swim. Now, this is important because there are no recognized set of skills when it comes to what is best when teaching a child how to survive a sudden fall into the water. The majority of the responses, almost 75%, centered around floating as the most critical skill to learn. And this is really backed by a lot of research. And I think that's important. Of course, you can see the disconnect between someone paying $210 for eight 30-minute swim lessons, which is pretty much the going rate. There are a lot of places that are much, much more expensive and only a few that are cheaper. So you're paying $210 for your kid to learn how to float. Well, parents want a little bit more than that, unfortunately. And there's a little bit of where the disconnect is. Treading water, elementary backstroke, and freestyle were also found to be important in the results. And we'll see a little bit later where that kind of goes against what the current research is saying, especially with the freestyle. The third theme, water safety tests, investigated the skills, distance, duration an elementary child should be, needs to master to be considered water safe. There is no current definition of water competency or water safety right now. So the participants came up with the 5 most recommended water safety skills were floating, treading, freestyle, backstroke, and breathing. And now breathing, that means being able to control your breathing when you fall into the water, being able to breathe when you're swimming, when to inhale, when to exhale, how to roll over on your back to breathe, basically how to keep yourself afloat, especially in a wavy condition or being, open water style kind of stuff. They felt that 1 pool length was enough to make a child considered water safe, and the duration only need to be a minute of floating or treading water. Where this leads us in terms of discussing, what the most critical factors for elementary age children in learning water safety are is, the data tells us it's instructor proficiency, calm and shallow pool water. And that would be, Irwin et al. In 2015, they looked into the fear a child has and how that affects their learning abilities in terms of learning how to swim. And instructor proficiency was number one, in terms of that study, which definitely is, matches up with what we found the author found in this current study. Calm water, Genly found the same thing, in his study versus wavy. The children just learn faster and progress faster. Coast et al. Did a study versus shallow water versus deep water lessons, and they found that the children who were taught in shallow water over the first 6 months had a huge increase in the ability to pick up the skills and to learn the skills faster compared to deep water. It caught up at 12 months and at 18 months, but the first 6 months, the shallow water was a big difference. The survival skills most important to master to prevent drowning was floating, treading water in elementary backstroke, like we talked about. Stallman and Moran said the exact same thing in their two studies, so that was good. And the areas where the study and current research weren't as supportive of each other, freestyle is the most critical stroke to learn. That was what this study said. But Potvin, during his study, breaststroke was the most critical survival stroke to learn. And that had a lot to do with being clothed, because when you're clothed, getting your arms out of the water in freestyle is very difficult when you have a lot of clothes, a sweater, a jacket, that type of stuff on. So there's multiple studies that show that actually swimming breaststroke with clothes is almost non-detrimental. Not only do you float better, but it doesn't slow you down in terms of the speed that you can swim at. The 1 minute duration for treading and floating found in this study is too short. You can look at Barwood, says at least 2 minutes. Pigeon et al. Says 2 minutes. Kenley says 3 minutes. So there were some things that needed to be adjusted with some of the data that was collected. The recommendations. Really what needs to happen is we need to update the current curriculum in these Learn to Swim schools with the research. Most of these Learn to Swim schools are 40 years old, the curriculum, and the current research is really picked up in the last decade. So the last 10 to 20 years is really telling us that what's being taught as Learn to Swim isn't what's actually helping children survive a fall into the water. We need to simulate more challenging conditions during lessons. Calm water is great to learn in, but it's not the reality of what you're going to fall into. Less than 25% of children drown in swimming pools. So we need to make sure that each student must be over-taught specific skills in order to survive an open water situation. So if you're going to teach in a calm pool, you really have to make sure that these lessons are really emphasizing what is necessary. The implications, the skills being taught in current Learn to Swim programs teach strokes and not survival skills. So they're learning how to swim freestyle instead of learning how to tread water. And children taught in these calm, warm pools, they lack the skills to survive a fall into a cold water, fully clothed. And that's something that really needs to be addressed in these programs. In terms of future research, there needs to be just continued research to develop a universal definition of water competency. Right now, there is none. And because of that, every entity that teaches swim lessons in water safety, there's nothing that they can say these skills are the 8 or 10 or 12 skills that you need to pass this test to be considered water safe. And without a universal definition, then you have a lot of people who don't look at the research and who don't have the mastery of these skills, teaching children things that aren't going to let them survive a sudden fall into the water. That about covers it. And just remember, no child is truly water safe. Thank you very much and have a great night.